Well, hello, traders and investors. I'm LA Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets, and we do it from a neoclassical perspective. And that means each time we look at the market each day and ask ourselves what happened today and what clues does it give us about what comes next. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube, and it's under the channel LA Little. If you want to subscribe, reach up in the right-hand corner, do so. Each time content's pushed, you get a notification. It's an easy way to keep up with what's going on. As far as what happened, it was another day of up, folks, other than the NASDAQ, right? The NASDAQ was really struggling today. NDX in particular, big cap stocks, big cap tech stocks just couldn't do it. They ended up negative on the day, almost 0.5%. Look at the divergence. Remember, for almost a year and a half, the Russell could not lift, the NDX would not come down. It's the exact opposite now, has been now for a good 2 weeks, and today was no different. 1.1% higher on the Russell, 0.5% lower on the NDX. Still can't get out of the doldrums. As far as the rest of the market, didn't do much, pretty much flat. Oil was the big story again today, up 5%. DAX down. We'll look at these charts as we go along here, but I want to flip over and show you what this oil market's starting to look like. So oil, 37.85. This thing has moved from 26 to 38. 12 bucks, 40+%, 3 weeks, roughly 3.5, 4 weeks now. That's the kind of move we've had. It's up here testing swing point highs. If you put it on a weekly, it's coming into this swing point low now. That may end up being resistance. You put it on a monthly, you can see how much this thing sold down. All the way from a 103 number, or actually a 108 number, to 26 bucks. That's why you're seeing the kinds of rallies that you're seeing elsewhere in these stocks. Let's move over to the indexes. So as long as that index keeps going up, and I'm talking about the West Texas Intermediate, the crude oil. Matter of fact, I'm going to flip to the Russell to start with. As long as that continues higher, let's get this centered here so you can see it, then what you're going to see is you're going to continue to see these markets, the Russell in particular, keep climbing. Go back and look at this chart on the Russell. Other than a little bitty pause right in here, this thing has moved about 1% a day for 8 days straight, or 8 days out of this 10. And so you had a huge move in the Russell. Russell's coming back up to do a retest regen now, a bearish retest regen in this case on the daily time frame. That area looks like this. And so we're looking at this prior swing point low break as it comes back up. And, I didn't think it would make it there, but it sure as heck looks like it's going to try. 1108's the number. We're trading at 1094. We're only 14 points away. 14 points, we're talking about another percent, right? I mean, that's what it's doing, 1% a day. I guess we could reach it tomorrow if that's the case. That's the Russell. That's the strongest one. Now look at the NDX. NDX can't lift. And in fact, the NDX tonight, if we're looking, so on the Russell, positive, right? Nothing negative about that chart. No failure, no nothing. Here, you can't get off the dime. Swing point high trades back into it today. Volume slightly heavier, and we're talking about slightly, but slightly heavier. And so what we have here is we have a test back into a bullish retest regenerate. And so anytime you break over a swing point high, the retrace back into it is the retest to see if you can keep going higher. Top of that bar is 42.65. We close it at not 42.65. The top was 43.01.63. We close it at 43.03. So we test into it, and even though we had a little bit more volume, we bounce back out. The suggestion here is that we're going to try to test it again tomorrow. That's on the NDX. Now, if we look at the others, and I'm going to go to the S&P next. The S&P actually was an inside day, so no clues there. The only thing that we have, and I'll come back to it, the only thing we have there is the continued resistance based on that bearish retest regen. And here on the NASDAQ, the resistance is based on this big wide price spread heavy volume bar here. Actually, it's more of a wide price spread bar. So a negative bar to the downside, you come back up, you're kind of stuck there. And let me pull real quickly back to the S&P 500. If you haven't been watching me each day, I've talked about this, but you're in this bearish retest regenerate zone. And as you come into that zone, right, it's hard to get over it, especially after you've gone more than 6 bars. And we're talking about 60 bars almost. Well, not that many, but probably 45 or 50. If we look at the weekly on this same chart, here you've got the same sort of thing going on. A bearish retest and regenerate. Here's the swing point low, so it's this bar. Draw it up. It's trying to get to the top of it. It came back within 6 bars. So the test here is to try to get to the top of that area. That's the indexes on our markets. And I really can't talk too much about the West Texas Intermediate and how that is moving all these markets at this particular point in time. DAX. So if we move over, take a look at Europe. We start here with this swing point high. That high, tried to push into it, didn't quite get to it, so we don't have a test yet. A little bit of a pullback, no volume. ECB on Thursday morning, the announcement. We'll see where this wants to go. If we look at the euro itself, we'll do that in a second. The euro is not benefiting this, but it's not greatly hurting it either. Let's look at the French market real quick. That one actually got over the swing point high. Another doji just kind of hanging there, tested a little bit lower. That one's actually a little bit more positive than the other. And if we look at Switzerland, Switzerland's been in a bind because Switzerland currency exchange isn't helping it like the euro has helped the European markets outside of Switzerland. And Switzerland in that swing point low still captured, so it's still a bearish retest attempt to regenerate lower. If we move over, take a look at Japan. Japan had a nice push up last night, just kind of hung there, nothing happening. If we look at the Hong Kong market, it was a mixed market in Asia last night. Hong Kong gets over, back under, a little bit more volume. Test on this swing point high. The top there's 2234, has more volume, gets over it, back under it. Probably going to try it again tonight. Moving over to the currencies. So the big test in these markets right now is what's going to happen with the next round of central bank intervention. We've got the ECB. That's the big test. Everybody's already banking on an increase in the QE, probably 10 billion, a increase in the negative interest rates, maybe another 10 basis points, and then whatever else they may dredge up as well. The euro, despite all that, is still holding in this same price zone. If I bring up the weekly, it's kind of congested here. And if you bring up the monthly and look at it, the monthly is still in this congestion area too. So in all these cases, the euro is still hanging here, trying to see, is the ECB really going to do something or not? And part of that is now the belief, right or wrong, is that the Fed following up next week will do nothing. And there was an assumption that the Fed may move in March. Well, that assumption's pretty much been killed, even with the better economic numbers of late. If we go over to the yen still hanging up at the highs. This is after they introduced their negative interest rate. The yen swing point high. It's up there testing against it. If it gets above it, it goes to the next level. That's going to continue to hurt the Japanese market and benefit to some extent the other markets. Gold, I've talked about gold doing a failure the last 2 nights. That was Thursday and Friday. Well, tonight gold gets over the swing point high. The top there is at 121.14 was the close. Top before was 120.84. So you actually get above it finally and stay above it. And so now the test is going to be is can you actually leg up or not? I don't know that they can. They've already had the push. I expect this thing will try to pull back in, but you can't tell that to the gold bugs. If you look at the GDX inside day, big wide price spread bar up there. Not a huge one, but a wide price spread bar, kind of a hanging man. Usually that means you're going to come back in, but in this age of everybody's market's going to do what they want it to do, and you're getting, you know, these huge moves out of markets. This one doesn't want to quit either. I mean, we've gone from 12 to 20, folks, 40%. It's the same sort of thing that we see on oil. Bonds just hanging there, can't do anything. And so when we back up and finally look at the dollar is up against resistance. That was this big bar, falls back. I suspect this dollar, if they do what, if Draghi over-delivers, I suspect this dollar is going to leg higher. Euro is going to come down. That's going to help the European market. Equity markets going to help our markets by proxy. But if he disappoints, then this dollar is going to come back down, and we bring it to the weekly, stay in this big range, try to test lower again. It really comes down to currencies one more time, and it really comes down to the West Texas Intermediate. Maybe these markets really want to see a weak dollar, right? It's going to help the U.S. markets. It's helping all the commodity markets, you know, the fact that the dollar is not moving higher. And because if you pull this back and look at it here, you can see how higher the dollar got. And this is a basic principle that sometimes gets lost. But when you get up into a range and you hold a range, then it doesn't matter that you were down here before. Now you're creating a new one, and the market gets used to it. And that's what they're doing in these markets right now. And the dollar's not playing nearly as much of a role as it used to. I think the dollar's going to play a role once we break out, top side or bottom. And then that's when we'll see whatever we're going to see take place, right, in the larger scheme of things. Finally, if we look at the USO, one of the things that you can tell is in these markets, these instruments have had significant moves. All of them have. This is $2 on 8. So in other words, this one is up about 25%, right? And if you take it from the bottom, it's up about 35. So even with the big move, this particular ETF, which is like built for failure for some reason, given the way they construct it, even though it's moved up and moved up nicely, not nearly capturing the gains in the underlying itself. So if I leave it with this tonight, what do we have? Well, we have what we've had for a while, and that is a market that doesn't want to fade. We've got huge rallies in the commodities. We now have the ECB coming up with expectations very high and a fairly significant rally into them. And we have one small little dent with the NDX big cap stocks. Those stocks can't find themselves, and I'll type them in here and just show you how much they are lagging. The big three, of course, Google. Google just can't get off the dime. Microsoft is the next, the second highest weighting. Same thing, same picture. And then finally Apple, and Apple's down here wallowing at the lows. Very distinct difference between big cap technology and the rest of the market. And in a way, you know, last year market couldn't fall because of big cap holding it up. Now the market can't fall because all the other stocks are being bought. Almost like sometimes when you see those Chinese stocks, you know, going up 20-30%. Well, that's what you're seeing in some of these energy stocks. I mean, I'm seeing some of these double overnight. That won't last, but while it lasts, if you're in them, enjoy yourself, because those things don't come around all that often. Tomorrow, not much of a clue. It looks to me like we're going to just test up and down again. Market's pretty much on hold here until the ECB does what it does. I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of a small pullback somewhere today, tomorrow, or the next day in front of the ECB. That's it for tonight. Thanks for joining me. And as always, I ask you to tell a friend or tell two. And if you do, I thank you in advance. I appreciate it. Share what I do with others. I depend on you just as you depend on me. Have a great night. Take care. I'll see you next time. Good night.